What is up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. I have a special guest this week. Like I mentioned earlier in the week, we're going to have a guest every single day. Excuse me, not a guest, a show every day. And we're going to have a special guest right now, Phoebe Schecter, all the way from the UK. She's had a busy summer, had a little bit of a jaunt here in Buffalo over the course of the summer. She's an NFL analyst for Sky Sports in NFL in the UK. Thank you so much for joining me today, Phoebe.
Thank you so much. I really look forward to these kind of annual meetups that we have around this time of year. And like you said before, I was in Buffalo and you and I were like two ships in the night. The one time I'm at training camp and you're not there. It's just so typical.
I know. I was so cool to run into you in London for the overseas game a couple years ago. That would have been awesome to catch up. But of course, I wasn't there those couple of days. Take me into that, because I think it's so interesting for you as somebody that was so woven into this organization early on in the Sean McDermott era to kind of come back and get a chance to see it now evolve, like a few iterations of the organization since. What were your takeaways when you got here for training camp and then obviously spent some time in Orchard Park?
Yeah, well, it was really great because I was there with Sky Sports. So we had to get some interviews in, and first one of the day was with Sean, with Coach McDermott, and it was very kind of surreal. It felt very odd for me to be back at training camp, yet in a very different role. One that when he hired me back in 2017, 2018, I never saw myself in. So that was pretty unique for sure. But it was great to be back. It was great to see everyone. I think the biggest thing, it's like a reunion for me. So much of a lot of people have changed, but there's a lot of that core infrastructure who are just the same, which, from players to coaches to front of house. I think that's a really great sign for a team and an organization, because that doesn't really happen that often anymore in the NFL. So being at training camp was fantastic. Seeing some of the guys that were rookies when I was there, I had Dawson Knox in 2019 for OTAs, and seeing how far he's come along. I think for me, training camp is always great because I get to, get a feel for the energy and the environment. You see the speed. The day that I was there, Deion Dawkins wasn't training, but you could see him coaching up guys. So to really see that kind of evolution of a lot of those players is probably what stood out the most for me. And it was after a day off, and it was the week that they were going to have the red and white game at Bill Stadium. So it was a great experience. And I think I just hugged everyone the whole time. I just kept smiling.
So for those that don't know, you interned with the team a couple of years in 27 and 2018, I believe, right?
Yep, absolutely.
As a coaching intern. And so you got there before the Bills drafted Josh Allen, and then got to spend that first season with him. And it's funny because I tell people all the time, I had the best timing professionally ever, because I started this job 3 months after the Bills drafted Josh. And so my entire professional NFL media career has been chronicling what is this, obviously this one of this generation's best quarterbacks. And for you, having the ability to kind of see up close and personal that first year, but then watch from afar over the last couple of years, what have been your, thoughts on how he has developed the leadership aspect, but then also what he did last season to be an MVP and how much he does for this team? You have just such a unique perspective on him.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the MVP conversation, right? Because that was one that it was so debatable between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. And when you really break down what an MVP is, it's literally the most valuable person and player to a team. And you can take out Lamar Jackson and they probably could still be successful. You can't take Josh Allen out of the Bills. He is such a creator for them. And I think to look back to when he was drafted in that first season with him, he was doing everything he can. It was his first time starting, a few games in. He was doing everything he could to shoulder the team and make something happen. And, that Josh Allen magic that we get to see nowadays. But now he's in a place where he's matured so much that he's making fantastic decisions. He's protecting the football. He has a run game that's able to help him develop and become more of that leader. He's got the right environment around him. And, we kind of forget he's had so many different offensive coordinators, quarterback coaches. That plays such a role, especially from a young guy's development. But I think what the Bills did really well early on was they brought in quarterbacks like Matt Barkley, DA, all these guys who were able to teach him how to become a professional and teach him the right way early on, that you get to really see him doing that now and flourishing. And I think it's, I said to him when I saw him, like, how proud I am of him. And yeah, MVP, he's still so humble, right? Like, he's never kind of taken that Wyoming, didn't have stars edge away from himself. He's remained this humble and hungry player, which I think just totally embodies the Bills way.
I went back, and it's great that we're connecting today, because I've spent most of the morning, as I do a lot of times before the start of the season, watching a couple of the games from last season that the Bills before the end of their season. And I went back today and watched Baltimore in the divisional round and then the AFC title game. And the couple like big takeaways that, you get these 9 months in between the end of the season, the start of the season. I don't want to say you forget, but it's just not as much at top of mind. And I thought Ed Oliver played a lot better than even I remember him playing in those two games. And then on the offensive side, how critical James Cook was to the success of this team in terms of sustaining drives, right? Like you mentioned how much Josh Allen has to shoulder for this offense. I thought last season, James Cook, and probably why the Bills decided to pay him, really took a step forward in being somebody they can count on to get those tough yards, to get those 5-yard gains on first down. The first touchdown against the Chiefs when he kind of broke it to the outside, unbelievable. Do you foresee, like, in this season and even another step forward for James Cook? Because to me, outside of Josh, with what they did at receiver or lack thereof, he still is positioned as the number one playmaker in this offense.
Yeah, and I still think he has that in him. It was funny. One of the questions I was talking to him about is when you get these kind of I'm going to go for it moments, like what goes through your head? And he just said, I really don't even think about it. It's just like in my nature to go for it. And you think about that play against the Chiefs where it was 4th down and 24 yards, I want to say, and he runs into the end zone. Those are the plays that you think about. But because of James Cook, those things are allowed to happen because James Cook has really just developed and become such a threat to defenses. He's powerful, he's evasive, his cuts are sharp. I mean, he's really just given life. And that combined with the play calling, Joe Brady is able to open up this offense even more because there finally is that threat of a run game. And now, yes, you've got James Cook, but Josh Allen can run the ball too. And so who do you have to defend? Who is the bigger threat between the two of them? And sometimes you don't actually know who that person is, which is what makes it so dangerous.
Really quickly before I want to get into the defensive side of the ball in a second here, but before we do, Shout is brought to you by Amtrak. If you're looking to take a trip in New York State or otherwise this fall, winter, make sure you check out Amtrak with stops in New York State, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Schenectady, Albany, Hudson, and so many more. There's so many benefits to taking Amtrak instead of driving. Okay, let's shift gears here to the defense because the Bills, they're reshaping things on the fly here. There was obviously an attention to detail in their defensive line, 3 new draft picks, 3 new free agent additions. This defensive line is going to look dramatically different. At the second level, stability, right? Terrell Bernard, the captain, returns. Matt Milano, Taron Johnson in the slot. On the back end, 2 new corners. One is somebody you're familiar with in Tre'Davious White, which, I should say 2 new defensive backs, Tre'Davious White, and then Cole Bishop expected to be that other starter opposite Taylor Rapp. What has you most excited? Let me just make this open-ended of this iteration of Sean McDermott, Bobby Babbich's defense.
Well, I think, and I can kind of look back to being with the team, right, is that Sean McDermott's always sat in on these defensive meetings, and he's had moments and times in his career where he's had more of an impact. But Bobby Babich has always been this kind of beautiful mind when it comes to defense, especially when it comes to the pass defense. And I think they're starting to finally get this team together where this is probably the best roster we've seen defensively for the Bills. And they've really needed a guy up front to be that difference maker. They brought in Von Miller, previously, and he's had some of that effect, but it never really capitalized anything. And like you said, Ed Oliver stepping up bigger in the later season last year. So they're starting to kind of put those puzzle pieces together. But I'm so excited to, like you're saying, the depth that they have at D-line, what that's going to be able to do, the idea to be able to rotate those guys in, keeping guys fresh, which means they're hungry and they're chomping at the bit more. I think that's going to play a big role and allow that pass defense to just be active. Such a big part of their mentality is the physicality and the driving down on that football. We both have, once that ball's in the air, it's everyone's right to the ball. And so I think that kind of mentality with the football IQ that Bobby Babich brings to it is what's going to be so exciting. So looking for more of those interceptions, those disguises, the way that they were able to, play with different looks. You bring Jordan Poyer back in, you've got Tre'Davious White, you've got a lot of those guys that kind of grew up with Bobby Babich. So they know how he works, they know how to run his scheme. And if anything, they're able to help coach up the other guys around as well, just like Micah Hyde was doing last year. So I think it's really exciting to see what this defense can be. And it truly is like the baby, I think, that Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich have created together. So it's going to be an exciting season because they need that. Defense wins championships. We know that.
So we talked a little bit about James Cook. I mentioned my thoughts on him, and you gave some of yours. And he could be the player that you answer here for. But if you were looking at this entire Bills roster and taking Josh Allen out of it, obviously, because of all the things that they ask him to do, who do you think is the player that's most important to the Bills 2025 season in terms of not only success, but maybe finally pushing through to that Super Bowl, whether it be making plays in big games, sustained success over the course of the season? Is there a player not number 17 that you kind of put next in line?
Yeah, so I had a couple of different people I had to represent because I've got Dion's shirt on today.
There you go.
So I think you always got a
snow mask.
Exactly, the snowman. He's one of my dudes. I think he's terrific. I mean, there's no one like him, right? If you are the guy that has to protect 17, you have to be so special anyways in their connection. You look at his stance. I mean, he is the only left tackle in the league that actually stands with such big splits because he knows he can and because the coaches know he can. And Dion last year was talking about, well, first off, he only allowed 3 sacks all season long, which is exactly what you need from your left tackle, but also talking about how he's learned to communicate with his defensive line coach and how they've really started to find this way that suits Dion, to be honest with you, that works with the way that his brain works, which we all know is so beautiful and creative. So I think that he is going to play a really big role if this team is going to be successful because that depth at offensive line is so key. And also, of course, just being a left tackle for sure. But I think if you're looking at the team as well, you have to look at Christian Benford, right? He had a big season last year, 2 interceptions, 1 sack, 64 combined tackles, but his overall PFF grade was ranked 5th out of 222 corners. And I think if you're trying to be that guy that's going to help operate Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott's defense, I think he's going to have a pivotal role. And, we did see some injuries last year to the DBs, and he's a big part of the playmaking skill for that defense.
Beyond Christian Benford, there's just questions that linger at cornerback. And the thing is, I tell fans all the time, when you spend the kind of money the Bills have at critical positions, and not just Josh Allen, of course, that contract, you look at that and it's huge and it has to be for one of the top quarterbacks. You mentioned Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown. On the other side, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, they paid Christian Benford. Matt Milano's paid, Terrell Bernard's paid. Like, the more guys you pay, the less money you're going to have for some of these supplementary positions. And I think the way they attacked cornerback in the draft with Maxwell Hairston was a smart way to go about it. The problem is he gets injured here. He misses the almost the entire summer. And now you're left with so many more questions opposite Benford, which I think also then pushes the importance of his ability to stay available, but then also continue to play at the level that you mentioned. When he left the field last season, and it's a little unfair to Kyer Elam, didn't play very much last season. I think getting thrown out there in that spot, that's a lot on his plate. but you saw a difference in almost Patrick Mahomes' comfort level when he was attacking on the outsides with Benford off the field.
You're so spot on. And that's the problem. When you're a corner, it's so blaringly obvious when, you know, you are what you're termed the pigeon, right? For an offense. You're the one that they're going to attack. And that's really tough. You know they're going to have to ride out this whole game being that guy. And if that guy across from you is Patrick Mahomes, the one of the best quarterbacks in the league, you know, when you're building this team for the Bills, you're building a team that you're going to have to beat the Chiefs, right? And at the end of the day, that's what this has really become. And corner is the hardest position possible because, yes, you might have safety help over the top, but sometimes you're on an island and you have to be able to just strap up and just get ready for that ride. And Mahomes knows and Andy Reid, I should say, both know exactly how to attack that position so perfectly. And it can really, corner is all about confidence. And you leave a game like that, or even in the middle of a game like that, you start to feel that confidence slowly leaving you. You can't play like that. That's what made Tre'Davious so exciting to watch. Early on, he played with so much swag and confidence, and people didn't even want to go there anymore. You've got to find a way to just be that guy, even when times are getting tough.
Did you catch up with Trey when you were in town?
I did. He's got babies and they're all bigger. That's so crazy, honestly. Seeing all of them. And I must say, half the guys I talk to are or going to be girl dads. So I don't know what's in the water in Buffalo, but the girl babies that are happening, it's phenomenal. Girl dads everywhere.
That's awesome. I asked about Trey because you're right. Like I think like injuries are hard, especially at the position that he plays, when you don't have probably, and you know, I've never talked in detail about this with him, so I don't want to put words in his mouth or what he goes through, but I wonder what that's like from a confidence perspective when you don't feel like you maybe have everything you had before the injury, and to almost remake yourselves, not only once, but now twice after two like unbelievable injuries. What was your sense about him, talking to him when you did? I don't know how much you talked football, but you know, he was chronicled a little bit on Hard Knocks, dealing with an injury right now. It doesn't seem like it's going to be something that lingers too far into the season. He might even be able to play in the opener against Baltimore. What did you take away from talking to Trey?
Yeah, and I think, the thing is, he's overcome injury before, right? And so I think in some ways that helps you because you're able to build a foundation in which to move forward and see what worked for you, see what didn't work for you. You understand the work it's going to take. I think the hardest thing, and you probably know this as well, is it's more mental than anything. Overcoming injury is your body is physically there. You know, maybe you've lost a little bit of speed, which again is challenging at the corner position because the whole identity of a corner is changing, but it's overcoming that mental. Is something going to happen? Am I going to hurt it again? And you really have to work so hard on that. So I think that's really the emphasis for all of this, because physically, you know, whether it's him or a lot of these guys that have injuries, they can overcome that. They know what to do. They've got the support systems in place. It's trusting your body to be there, have the right foot, have all that stuff working and operating at the highest level when you need it the most.
I'm looking at year 9 here for Sean McDermott, and personally, it's crazy, right? Time flies.
Insane.
Personally, like I have really noticed, it's hard to really put this into words, but it feels like Sean over the last 2 years, probably since that Tyler Dunn story came out, and he was probably forced to really look in the mirror and have some hard conversations in the building. It's really felt like he's never felt more comfortable in his skin the last 2 years, like really settled into who he is, who he wants to be, what he wants this team to be. Not that it always wasn't that way, but I think when you go through something like that, I mean, when you become like a national story, you know, it can be jarring, and some people come out of it different ways. And I think the way he's come out of it and the way that he continues to open up doors, trying to find answers to what's kept this team from getting over the hump, I think it's been admirable. There's still pressure, though, on the other side of that. And now you look at year 9, there's a portion of the fan base that I think, whether it goes back to that 13 seconds game or whatever specific incident has happened over his career, like any player or coach, you know, wonder if he can get over the hump. How much pressure do you think is on Sean this year going into this season, knowing that while you still have years left of Josh Allen's prime, those years are running out here?
They are running out. And it's funny. I remember a couple of years ago speaking with some of the players, and they felt that pressure, right? They felt that pressure in the building for success right now. I think there's, to your point, Sean McDermott's got this level of comfort within himself. I think there's so much learning that comes with being a first-time head coach, whether it's understanding the players, the personnel that you have in your building and who's going to fit your culture, the element of believing in your process when you might have so much noise around you that doesn't necessarily align with your vision. How do you keep trusting in what you believe is right when others are telling you it's wrong? I think kind of coming through that as well. But to your point, there's this element of Sean, and I always remember it. It was the 2018 season. It was not a successful season for us. But in the middle of the season, Sean was like, all right, everybody in here, all the offensive, defensive, special teams, I want you all to feed back to me what you think I'm doing wrong. For a head coach to do that is basically unheard of, right? For that ability to kind of be reflective, to be open to criticism, to be accountable, and have us all write him what we thought we could do better. That's huge. And even me, right? I'm just an intern, essentially. I'm an offensive assistant, but like he didn't have to even ask me to do that. And he's open to so many people's perspectives, and he's able to learn from every person that he's around. So that leadership piece, I think, plays such a big role. And I think the other element to all of this is to see the relationship between him and Josh Allen and how it's kind of changed over the years as they're both getting more comfortable, understanding each other. Obviously, Josh is developing. I think that plays a really big role in it. He doesn't have to be as much of the juice guy. People in the building now understand what the vision is and where they're wanting to go. So it can be much more player-led. So it almost takes a lot more of that pressure off him as well.
I know you're not in the building in 2025, but what do you think is the biggest difference between in their relationship from early to now? Like one thing I've probably noticed is like year after year, which is just natural, a player earns a coach's trust, right? Like there's so many different situations that you get placed in that you're building equity with the other person over the course of the relationship. But from your perspective, knowing both of them, what do you think is the biggest difference between the relationship now and back then?
I think it's more equals. I don't know if that makes sense, but before it was very much head coach, quarterback, and you're a young quarterback who we're going to have to teach you what the right way is, what the Bills' way is. I think very much so. They each can stand on their own and carry forward those belief systems. They understand, they don't have to check in with each other all the time to say, hey, what do you think about this? Is this the right move here? I'm going to have these conversations with these players, etc. There's a lot more trust in Josh Allen, and I think that goes both ways. Josh understands what Sean is trying to do as well, because in a lot of ways, Josh is really that communicator between, the front office, the coaches, and the locker room. And when those people are on the same page, I think that's where you get the kind of beauty and motion that we see when it comes to watching, the Bills play. And it truly is a family. You get to see it, every week. It really is a family in Buffalo.
This one's going to be a really fun season. It is the last one in what I still affectionately call the Ralph, Rich Stadium, Highmark Stadium, Ralph Wilson Stadium, whatever you call it. It has gone through, some battles over the years. It's funny walking through the stadium over the last couple of weeks for whether it's practices or for preseason games. It's like this place is falling down. Bills Mafia has made this thing fall down over the years, and they're about to open the new place up across the street. You are going to be there for Thursday Night Football in 3 weeks against the Dolphins. How excited are you?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I can't wait to just feel the ground rumbling underneath me. It's going to be, and of course, squish the fish. Like, who doesn't want to be there for this game versus the Dolphins? I have to say, I went out there with Sky Sports, and we did a new stadium, old stadium kind of segment. And it was funny. Our camera guy we pulled up and you can see both stadiums on both sides of the road. And he's like, is that a high school? He's British. He's like, is that a high school stadium? I was like, no, that is the stadium. That is the Ralph. Respect it.
That is awesome. And people don't really appreciate the lore until you step in there after a walk through the tailgate. So do you have plans to maybe head out into the tailgates before the game, or what's on the docket?
Absolutely. So I am actually coming there with a company I work with, and we're bringing 5 diehard British Buffalo Bills fans.
Wow.
So they, and it's amazing because a lot of them have saved up their whole lives to be able to go to, this might be their first American football game, first NFL game, and of course, first Bills game. So it's going to mean so much to them. So we're going to make sure they do all the Buffalo and Bills, everything. So they're hyped for tailgates, and they've already mentioned about the tables. I was like, you guys are not jumping through tables, but you can observe.
You can't be having any hospital visits before we get on the flight back to the UK. Okay?
Right?
Let's relax here. This was awesome. Shout out to UK and London Bills backers, some of my favorite fans in any part of the planet. Phoebe, thank you so much. Let people know where they can find you if they can kind of keep up with you over the course of the season.
Yeah, I'm kind of on all your social media, just all Phoebe_Schecter. And I hope to meet some of you when I come to Buffalo in a couple weeks. And Matt, it's such a pleasure just hanging out with you again and talking all things Buffalo. So I'm so grateful for this time and people that love to talk about the Bills.
That is super awesome. And we'll talk to you in a couple weeks. And I'll see you this time because I'll be there.
Yes. Amazing. Sounds fantastic.
All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. We're almost there. Week 1 is here. Bills